or not that abandon, but reducing the share of hydro in the total electricity production. So in this we will get momentum as soon as we start getting gas coming from offshore. What we are going to do with such amount of gas? So either we are going to find good markets for this gas abroad or here, or then we are going to be flaring the gas. So this would be terrible for the country. So this is a good question, because we have the largest share of hydro, and Brazil is considered the cleanest energy matrix as far as electricity is concerned, but maybe we will have to move a little bit far away from hydro and get more place for gas in particular, and even from coal we are talking about here. So but let's take this as maybe as a challenge for our next video conference, if you agree.
Okay.
And we can maybe try to...
Stephen Dow in on that. We can get Stephen Dow because he knows your sector quite well and China's sector quite well.
Yeah, would like. Yeah, what about that? That's a good idea. I like the suggestion of the name. So maybe we can take the question from here, Patricia, then?
Yes, by all means. Now you
So, you go.
My name is Alessandra. Still regarding the relationships between China and other energy and raw material exporting countries, how Chinese investors were dealing with growing nationalisms before the current global financial crisis. Now, how the world economic crisis may affect those relationships. In negotiation with China, is it easier to build a... Brazil expects to receive huge amounts of Chinese investments to expand its oil and gas production and exports. In 2009, China and Petrobras announced a long-term agreement which proposed total Chinese investments in the Brazil oil industry of $10 billion for 2009 and up to $174 billion to 2012. Do you think those figures are realistic? Is China really prepared to focus so much on just one country? Wouldn't that mean very high risk in a Chinese perspective? What would make Brazil a special and reliable partner in order to deserve such huge Chinese investments?
Say your name.
Good afternoon, Professor. My name is Bruno. I would like to know, Brazil started opening up its oil and gas industry for foreign capital in 1998. The country is systematically ranked among the pop star countries to receive foreign investments. However, the relations between Brazil and China have been very small. What can explain such a relative lack of interest of China in the Brazilian oil industry? And what changed more recently then? Another point is China just moving out its huge financial reserves accumulated in USA bonds and looking for better returns elsewhere? Or is it possible to believe that those investments may be seen as integrated projects led by the Chinese government to improve China's energy position?
Okay, thank you. I will take those two questions. First, Alessandra. National, you go to Russia and one or two other places, and I think you will find that in most of these cases that China has also had difficulty. So I think where there is true resource nationalism, China also finds it very difficult to get in to make investments. And where China has an advantage is not where there is resource nationalism, but more where Western governments are not investing. Sometimes, however, with the government involvement, for example, in Iran, or maybe in Saudi, the Chinese companies are able to take small steps and take some advantage over the Western national oil companies. But this is usually not the case. How can China take advantage of the world economic crisis? Well, I think what they've done, as we've already discussed, is that they have lots of cash. So they can use cash, and they've clearly used that with Russia, with $25 billion of loan, but that's loans for oil. There's no direct tie-in to investment in Russia, but there may be some things that will emerge as time moves on. We haven't yet seen China making any loans to the Middle East. In negotiating with China, is it easier to build government-to-government relations or company-to-company agreements? When I first looked at this question yesterday, I wrote down company-to-company agreements is easier because companies are much easier animals to deal with. They have very simple objectives, as we've discussed. However, as we've seen actually in Angola, that if you have simple objectives and those objectives don't match, then the project is not on. Whereas governments have much... I don't think there's an easy answer to that question. I think it's very much case dependent. If we look at the $10 billion, now, you may need to correct me, but my reading of the deal is that it is not an investment, it is a loan. It is a loan to Petrobras for them to develop the sub-salt oil, and it is a loan in return for which China will be supplied with oil. That's the $10 billion. I had not heard of the promise of maybe $170 billion till 2012, and I agree that's a lot of money. But if we just focus on the $10 billion, I've written down here, not so huge. In the same week, they lent $25 billion to Russia. So when you have more than $1 trillion of foreign exchange reserves, 10 billion is nothing. It's peanuts. 170 billion is a little more significant. And that then takes us what is special, but the answer is Brazil is not that special. But coming on to Bruno's question, clearly there's been a change in Brazil-China energy relations in the last 6 months. What has happened? I think two things have happened. One is that China has realized that Brazil actually does have a lot of oil after the discovery of the sub-salt oil fields, whereas 3 or 4 years ago those reserves didn't exist. Secondly, until now there was no obvious advantage for the Chinese because Brazil is a very open and transparent petroleum regime. So, sort of China coming in with something in its back pocket does give it no advantage. However, given that everybody's suddenly short of money, if you've got a lot of money today, China has a competitive advantage. So by coming in and lending $2 billion, it has a competitive advantage that it did not have.